You will get the most from any Systems to Win video when you launch it from its video homepage.
In any Systems to Win template, when you click a cell, if you see a drop-down arrow in that cell, like you see here, then you know that you can select that drop-down arrow to see a drop-down list of choices that you can choose from, which is particularly nice for both faster data entry and to avoid typos. There are many fields in many of your Systems to Win templates that use drop-down lists. And wherever you see any drop-down list, you will see a DV worksheet. And when you select that DV tab, that's where you'll find that all drop-down lists are defined. And this is where you can easily add another choice to a drop-down list. And this is also where you can come to see a legend of what does each potentially short code mean. And if we now go back to the Sample tab and select that drop-down arrow again, we see that whatever we had added to that list is now one of the choices that we can select. It is that easy to add your own choices to your own drop-down lists in any Systems to Win template. Now, if you happen to be a leader within your organization, then you can personalize a master template so that whenever anybody opens up that master template in your organization, there are your drop-down lists that you personalized in a way that your personalized drop-down list will be automatically found and transferred each year when new versions of Excel come out. For example, you might personalize the drop-down lists in your FMEA template for a list of what can go wrong in your industry or your organization, and how bad would be the effects if one of those things went wrong, and what might be the causes of that going wrong. You will find personalizable drop-down lists in many of your Systems to Win templates. And by the way, if you have a cell that has conditional formatting that turns yellow or green or red like you see here, then that often means that there's a special Systems to Win feature where conditional formatting is based upon that initial symbol rather than words. So if I copy that cell and then paste it and then leave the initial symbol but edit the word that comes after it, then you can create multiple new choices with different words that will still correctly turn the cell green based on the leading symbol rather than the words, which can be especially helpful for international organizations. Now, drop-down lists are especially useful to avoid typos on those worksheets where you want to use Excel's filtering capabilities. So let's look at that next. Now, if filter is already turned on, like it is in your tool selection matrix, then you can simply select the drop-down arrow in the header cell, uncheck the box for Select All, and then check the box for what you want to filter for. And then that narrows the list to show only those rows that are good for, in this case, voice of the customer. And then we might do it again if we wanted to narrow our list for tools that are good for voice of the customer and are good for service office environment rather than production. A heart means it's really good for service, a X means it's kind of good. And now we can see by those tiny little filters that appear in the header, that symbol means that we're now filtering based upon both of those columns. And if we filter based on the phase of your lean journey, we see that we could use number filters like less than or equal to, and we can string together and or statements and custom Boolean filters, all kinds of power. By reselecting the Select All checkbox, or we could select the Data tab and click the Filter button. which will turn off filter entirely and show all the rows again. So turning off a filter is pretty easy, but what about turning it on? Let's say that I want to filter this training matrix. How do I do it? Now, if you know the correct cells to include in your list, then you can just select the Data tab and then click the Filter button, which turns Filter on. Now, the problem with this example is that you didn't select the right cells. So let's toggle Filter back off because it's wrong, and any analysis that you did from there would be wrong. Let's scroll down and notice this thin gold line that bounds the data range in many Systems to Win templates. And there's another thin gold line over here on the right, just like there is at the bottom. Those thin gold lines bound the data range. In other words, Hershey years ago, the legend is that they totally messed up their forecast for chocolate for Halloween because somebody chose the wrong data range. Huge disaster. So with any Systems to Win template, you choose the Systems to Win tab and then select the More button that contains a few of the less commonly used special Systems to Win buttons, including the Set or Reset Filter button. And that's the easy way to turn on filter, ensuring that you have the correct cells selected. And now we might want to filter for William Exec, and we might choose the Does Not Contain menu and say it does not contain a period, because a period means in this template that the cell will turn gray because that person doesn't need that capability. And we want to filter for what they do need. And we might do something similar for another person. So now I've got a couple of columns filtered. So then if we want to reset the filter, not turn filter off, but to reset it, then we can do the same thing. Select that same Set or Reset Filter button. And now filter is still on, but no columns are filtered. And again, if we wanted to turn it off, we go to the Data tab, click the Filter button, and that turns filter off. So if you want to turn filter on in any Systems to Win template, it's a really easy and powerful feature. Go to Systems to Win tab, More, Set or Reset Filter. And if you ever get stuck and can't remember how to use any Excel function, what do? You go to your Help tab and then jump to the Excel training section on your help sheet, where there will be a link that you can follow to online training to remind you how to do what you forgot how to do for any Excel feature. In this case, how do I use Excel's filter capability, in case you ever forget. And let's end with a couple of tips for how to use advanced features to filter your data for nuggets of gold. And the first tip is don't use filter to sort. Use sort to sort. And there's online training for how to do that. And finally, let's say that you have already filtered your PFMEA based on a user-defined column that you use to identify what is similar between this new product line versus the old product line that you want to copy from. You want to copy only those rows that are similar. So now you select all the cells in this filtered range that you want to copy. Now remember, if I just went Control-C, Control-V, it's going to copy everything, including those rows that are hidden. That's not what I want. So I go to my Home tab, Find and Select, Go to Special, and then select the Visible Cells Only radio button. And when I click OK, that will copy to the clipboard only those visible cells, not the hidden ones, which I can then paste as the starting point for my new FMEA that is similar but different from my old product line. Now that's a standard Excel feature, but you cannot use that standard Excel feature in a non-Systems to Win FMEA that you paid your black belt to create. Why? Because in a typical homegrown FMEA, this is a merged cell. And when you have merged cells, you have lost Excel's capabilities to use filter, to use sort, to use pivot tables, and to use copy visible cells. In other words, you've lost the primary benefits of using Excel for an FMEA. In your Systems to Win template, that looks to a printer or a human being like it was a merged cell, but it's not. The data is still there, so you still do have all the functionality and power of Excel for filtering, sorting, copying visible cells, and pivot tables. So why reinvent? With your Systems to Win templates, you've got special features for drop-down lists, special features for conditional formatting, the set or reset filter button that makes that so much easier. And even in the case of the FMEA, you've got the capability to use those features in a workbook where you usually can't.